Taoiseach, the Kyran-Durnan case has shocked the country to the core. This is a tragic and dark case that asks serious questions from the state. Taoiseach, how can a vulnerable child go missing for 2 years? How can a vulnerable child just disappear for 2 years? How broken is the state care system that we're not talking about an intervention here, that we're actually talking about the potential murder of a child? And the political establishment has expressed shock and disbelief over what has happened to Kyran. But the truth is that Kyran is only one of 227 children who have died in state care or known to state care just in the last 10 years. Of that 227, we know that 11 were murdered. Another child died as a result of a suspected non-accidental injury, and a further child lost his life due to a suspected homicide. 40 children died because of suicide, 8 because of drug overdose, 16 because of road traffic accidents, and 18 by other accidents. And I want to reference some of the National Review Panel reports because I feel that these reports actually speak for themselves, and I've ascribed pseudonyms to the children that have died. The report on the death of Hugh, published in 2018, highlights how he was referred to CAMHS, but was left without treatment due to CAMHS policy, where young people who are using drugs or alcohol are not eligible for service. Hugh died at the age of 16 from a drug overdose. Niamh, whose report was published in 2019, died at the age of 15 by suicide. She too was deemed ineligible by CAMHS. I want to mention Ava also. She was a victim of child sexual abuse. The abuse occurred in one Tusla area, and she lived in a different area. Area 1 believes that Area 2 was speaking to her about the allegation, and Area 2 believes that Area 1 was doing it. And I quote from the report, "This ultimately meant that nobody in Tusla spoke to Ava about the alleged experience of sexual abuse. CAMHS discharged her after the second appointment, as they had no evidence of mental illness. She went missing at the age of 14 and her body was found a few days later." The report on the death of Luke is heartbreaking. He experienced sexual abuse as a child. His father died at the age of 9. Luke found his father's body. His mother died shortly after that. Luke was put into foster care. In foster care, he was robbed and assaulted. He then went to a homeless hostel. He faced threats in the hostel. He moved onto the streets. He then went to prison. There are no details of the circumstance of his death, only that his body was found 2 weeks later after he was released from prison. He was a child. The 1916 proclamation states that we will cherish all the children of the nation equally. Taoiseach, the report on the death of Luke notes that he never received a birthday present and that Santa Claus never came to him. Will you demand that the Minister for Children, Tusla and CAMHS are brought to the Children's Committee in light of the shocking case of Kyran-Durnan and the hundreds of other children who have lost their lives in this state in the last 10 years?
Well, Ken Corla, I don't think there's a person in this House, on any side of this House, or a person in Ireland who isn't both utterly horrified and utterly heartbroken at what is emerging in relation to the case of young Kyran-Durnan. This is nothing to do with political establishment or any sort of rhetoric like this. This is just to do with basic humanity. An 8-year-old boy effectively went missing for 2 years, and the saddest and most painful thing is that nobody asked why or where was he for that period of time. And I think any one of us thinking that that could happen to any child is deeply upsetting, and it is going to require, and let me say this at the outset, it is absolutely going to require a structure to get to the exact bottom of this. Of that there is no doubt. But right now, we have to be very conscious of the fact that the Gardaí are very actively investigating this. To say there's a live investigation underway would capture it. The Gardaí have appealed to the public for information. I echo that appeal today. The murder investigation has been commenced, and while no arrests have been made at this point, the investigation is ongoing. It's being led by a senior investigation officer based out of an incident room established at Drogheda Garda Station, and Gardaí are appealing to anyone who has any information in connection with the disappearance of Kyran to contact Drogheda Garda Station, or indeed the Garda Confidential line, or indeed any Garda station as well. I know that vigils were held in both Drogheda and Dundalk over the weekend, and it's clear that the community, the whole community, has been deeply affected in Louth. So we're very conscious that that is ongoing. I'm also conscious that the Gardaí are currently investigating this case and liaising with Tusla as part of that investigation. And Minister O'Gorman has confirmed that he has asked Tusla to send this case to the National Review Panel. And as you quoted some reports there, the role of the National Review Panel is to examine the circumstances surrounding the death of any child who has links to the caring structure of the state. I am conscious, and this is not in relation to Deputy Tobin, but I'm conscious when any case like this comes to public view. Obviously, people speculate and discuss, sometimes from a place of good. It is important, though, that I think we afford the state agencies the space that they need to investigate the matter fully. Tusla, the Child and Family Agency, is a statutory body with responsibility for child protection in Ireland, and under Children First, everyone has a role to play in ensuring the welfare and the safety of children. And information on how to report any concern about any child, whether as a mandated reporter or a concerned neighbour, family member or member of the public, can be found on Tusla's website. More broadly, and I'm not suggesting you conflated the issue, but you quite rightly brought up a broader issue in relation to children in care and what happens when a child in care goes missing. Tusla has advised that they prepare an absence management plan for each child in care, and this plan is a tool to manage the risk in the event of a child going missing. Perhaps I can come back in on that in my second answer, but I'm sure the Oireachtas Children's Committee will, in due course, wish to discuss this issue.
First of all, Taoiseach, you haven't addressed the question that I asked in relation to this. This is the case that many of these deaths are as a result of a failure of state care. And I'll give you other examples. The government is using special emergency arrangements at the moment to accommodate children. These are often unregulated, rented accommodations provided by third parties with questionable vetting standards. Children are going missing every month, and these children are being exposed to sexual exploitations. I have raised these cases practically every month for the last 5 years in this House, as have other organisations across the country. Shockingly, Judge Sims sent a report to the Minister for Children, which actually details cases. The Minister for Children shredded these reports stating GDPR reasons, and actually the government reported Judge Sims to his superiors for raising his head above the parapet on this situation. You know, Minister O'Gorman cut funding for the Child Law Project just recently. They provide transparency on the operation of the childcare system in the courts. Taoiseach, you said that you want to make this country the best country in Europe to be a child. But for thousands of children across this country, it is the polar opposite of that. And I would ask you, it is really important that we get to the heart of the dysfunction, the fatal dysfunction that exists in our childcare system currently in this country. And will you ask for the Minister for Tusla and CAMS to be brought before the Children's Committee to focus on this fatal dysfunction?
It's not my job to order the business of an Oireachtas committee. I'm sure you're well. I'm sure you're.
Please, Deputy.
You're asking me a question as a Taoiseach. I'm going to respond to it if that's all right. And firstly, Minister O'Gorman is a good person who works hard and does a good job. So I don't like the aspersion cast on him in the constant framing of your questions, quite frankly. And I'm not going to. Of course, I'm going to use the time available to me when you raise the case of Kieran Durnan to put on the record of this House the extreme concern of government, and I think this House. And I think that's an appropriate thing to do. You are right in relation to the need to reduce our reliance on the special emergency arrangements in relation to the accommodation for children in care. I agree with that. Tusla's strategic plan on residential care does outline plans to increase residential care capacity, and Tusla does continue to progress a number of measures to secure residential care capacity. We have seen an increase to the foster care allowance in 2024. We've seen a further increase in that allowance scheduled to take effect in November. The Minister for Children, Minister O'Gorman, has secured an increase of 14% in Tusla's total budget for 2025. That's an extra €145 million. These are extraordinarily difficult cases. Every child deserves their voice to be heard, including vulnerable children. In fact, most particularly vulnerable children who don't have others to raise their voices. You're right to highlight that. But I just don't wish the two issues in relation. We don't yet know the facts. We need to know the facts in relation to the horrific situation that's now emerging, the heartbreaking situation in relation to Kieran Durnan.